And welcome to another edition of You and the Law, the program that explains the law and empowers citizens with knowledge of their rights and responsibilities. I am Umudu. Today we are discussing an issue that affects millions of people around the world, but often remains hidden in plain sight: trafficking in persons. In the Gambia, the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons, NATIP, leads national efforts to prevent trafficking and protect victims and support survivors, among other things. Joining us today is the Executive Director of NATIP, Ms. Aissatou Dawa. Thank you very much for joining us on You and the Law.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, first, let's try to understand what human trafficking is. So for viewers who may not fully understand what the issue is, what exactly is human trafficking?
Thank you. When we talk about human trafficking, some people might refer to it as trafficking in persons. Others would say it is a form of modern slavery. But in simplified terms, human trafficking is simply one individual using deceit, dishonesty, force, misrepresentation, coercion, you name it, to recruit another individual based on false pretense, and the sole purpose of doing so, or the end result, would be exploitation. That is the simplest way in which I can explain it. But for you to say this is human trafficking, there are three elements you need to look out for. One would be the act. That is the form of recruitment. It's either transportation, harboring of the individual, transfer of the individual from one place or the other. You then come to the second element, which is the means. What were the methods that were employed in securing that recruitment, that transportation, that transfer, that harboring? So this can manifest in different ways. As I said, that it can be use of force, it can be threat, use of violence, deceit. And the third and most important element would then be the purpose. Why was this done? And ultimately for exploitation. And exploitation can manifest in various forms. It can be sexual exploitation, that is forcing individuals into prostitution. It can be labor exploitation, that can be either as a domestic worker that is not given their full labor rights as enshrined in the law. It can be cyber criminality, that is getting people or forcing them to scam other individuals online. But the most important part of the exploitation is that it has to be for the benefit of the individual that has recruited the victim. So just think about the act, the means, and the purpose to qualify for human trafficking.
That's it. So it's different from smuggling?
Very different.
Okay, the legal difference. What's the difference?
The legal difference between the two is one is contractual and the other is not. So when you talk about smuggling of migrants, commonly known as the back way in the Gambia, you're looking at an agreement between two people. This may be in a form of a formal contract, but it may just be a verbal agreement. I would pay you this amount of money, and your obligation is to take me from point A to point B. That is from Gambia to Libya, from Gambia to Mauritania, you name it. When you get to that point, what happens after that is entirely up to you and not under the control of the person that transported you from point A to point B. Whereas in human trafficking, it is not a contract because you're not doing anything willingly. You've been recruited by false pretense, use of force or deceit, and forced to do what you had not agreed to do, or forced to do what was different from what was promised. So in a sense, one is a contract, the other one is not. However, it is important for me to state that a case can start up as a smuggling of migrant case. For example, a migrant travels from Gambia, gets to Agadez. It's very vulnerable because they have no money, they have no food, they have no place to sleep. And due to their state of vulnerability, that exposes them to be victims of trafficking because of the vulnerabilities that surround their situation. So there can be a meeting point, but they're completely two different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was a very important point. You can start from one
Yes.
and then end up being
Absolutely.
the other, just like that.
Yeah.
So how significant is trafficking in persons in this country?
Trafficking in persons is very significant in this country. Before going to its existence, I would say that it is one transnational organized crime that comes second after drug trafficking. It generates billions of dollars of revenue globally. There are many victims that remain unidentified, and in many cases, victims themselves may not identify as tip victims, which is also another problem that affects reporting. But in the Gambia, human trafficking is prevalent. We see a lot of young people, in some cases under 18, that are engaged in prostitution. For the average person, you think these young people have taken a very wrong route. They're not getting education, they're not getting skill, but they decide to engage in prostitution, not knowing that a good number of these individuals are victims of human trafficking. And they have been forced to engage in these activities and need to pay a certain amount to certain people. I always give an example. Imagine a perpetrator that has 10 girls working for them. On a daily basis, these girls would need to pay $1,000 a day. $1,000 a day by 7 days, that's $7,000. That in a month is $28,000. $28,000 by 10, that's $280,000. You multiply that by 10 girls in a year, that is over $3 million someone is earning. And the sad reality is that a lot of these girls even work when they're on their menstrual period, sadly. So it is in existence. But again, another part of human trafficking that is prevalent in the Gambia that people may see on a daily and not feel that this is trafficking is the aspect of labor exploitation. I see a lot, and based on the cases that we deal with at NATIP, you would see a contractor get laborers from other countries or even Gambians to work for them. It is happening even in some of the supermarkets in the country. You would see individuals that are non-Gambians. They have been brought to the country. They've probably been recruited, promised that they're going to be paid a certain amount. When they come, some of them may not be receiving their pay for up to a month under the pretext that you would be paid at the end of your contract. It comes with maltreatment, it comes with exploitation, it comes with stripping them of their dignity, and these are typical human trafficking cases that may not be apparent to the eye when one looks at the situation. So it is in the Gambia, it is a fact. There are growing concerns, and the agency continues to investigate and have individuals prosecuted for crimes related to human trafficking.
That's it. Now, the most vulnerable groups, I think you've mentioned, really, the girls, it seems, and perhaps even young people as well.
Yes.
What have you seen?
Absolutely. In the Gambia, and I would say globally, in every country, women and children continue to be the most vulnerable. This doesn't mean that boys or men don't get exploited, in a sense that there are various sets of vulnerabilities. You can have individuals from impoverished backgrounds or communities that naturally would be vulnerable because everyone in that community would want to go out to search for greener pastures and look at places where the grass is greener. That's one. You also have another set of vulnerable individuals who may not be affected by, let's say, finances, exposure with education, but due to lack of information on what, for example, fraudulent recruitment may look like, they may end up falling in that trap. Another instance where you can also say athletes or sports personnel can also be vulnerable is the fact that trafficking in persons using sports or through sports is actually something that is taking place. As recent as 6 months ago in Senegal, a Senegalese national did pass away because he was promised that he was going to play in a certain division, and then he passed away in Ghana. That is just next door. It is very likely that instances like this have also happened in the Gambia, but did not get reported. So we continue to see different cases manifest, and this is the basis of our intervention to ensure that we continue to raise awareness. But as we raise awareness and investigate, also ensure that we are seen to support in making our legal system operational by having people prosecuted and convicted.
That's it. We will come to that part of it, the law. But I wonder, though, I think it's important to go through some of the common methods these traffickers use. What trends are you seeing now? Has it changed over the years?
Yes, trends have definitely changed. I mentioned earlier the issue of labor exploitation and sexual exploitation. But one other trend that is coming up is the issue of QNet. Yes, not QCell, not QTV. Let me be clear. This is QNet, and QNet is a brand in Hong Kong that is well known for their business model in selling products to individual people pay, and there's a scheme around it. Now, what traffickers have done is look at this very beautiful business model, understand that people subscribe to that business model, but use it at the detriment of the individuals that want to buy these products. So they use the scheme to say, for example, we're going to send you to the Gambia, or we're going to send you to Europe to work at so and so place, but before that, you have to undergo training in the Gambia. In order for you to undergo training in the Gambia, you have to buy a product for membership. And the product you're going to buy for membership is going to cost you, let's say, $1,200. You pay the $1,200, come to the Gambia, expecting some form of training, either for subsequent travel to another country or for better financial opportunities in the Gambia, only to realize that none of that is true. You ask for your money, and the response is, before you get your money back, you need to recruit 3 or 4 people to join us. So when they pay, then you get released. So if you do not recruit those individuals, you find yourself in a situation where you have no money, you have no place to stay, then the exploitation comes in. You either have to work as a sex worker, or engaged in low or no pay construction work, or other things that will help you to survive. Not all cases of QNet may end up as human trafficking, depending on whether the elements I mentioned earlier are present or not, but a good number of these cases end up being human trafficking cases. And we have Gambians that have actually fallen for this trap. So it's important that we're aware of this emerging trend. QNet, you hear it all the time. Be careful. It's not all rosy.
That's it.
Yeah.
If a deal really is too good to be true, it's probably not true.
Yeah, absolutely. I quite agree. Absolutely.
So people are being trafficked out. Others are being trafficked in.
Yes.
And I'm sure you would have the transit. Others are just passing by,
yes,
as it were.
Yeah.
So the law, what does the law have to combat trafficking?
Very important question. But firstly, let me say the Gambia falls under all of those 3 categories that you have mentioned. It is a country of source, it's a country of destination, and also a transit country. And when it comes to the law, the issue of human trafficking is not just a concept that we talk about to educate people on the things that they should be wary of, but it is actually in our laws. The Gambia signed and ratified the Palermo Protocol, and of course, with all international conventions that are signed and ratified, there's a need for domestication. How do you domesticate? That is, ensure that those provisions are tailor-made and embedded in our local legislation. This was done through the Trafficking in Persons Act of 2007. Now, the Trafficking in Persons Act of 2007 is a very dynamic piece of legislation, because many a times you have laws that criminalize and punish. But with this particular piece of legislation, it sets up NATIP, that is one. So it's more or less like has provisions that are like an establishment order in the legislation. It sets up the roles and functions of the board of directors. It sets out the offenses that fall under trafficking in persons, and also the penalties that these offenses attract. So you see that it is a piece of legislation that is wholesome in a sense that it looks at all things trafficking. The law is currently being reviewed in a sense that trafficking is a matter that is evolving. Every now and then you have emerging trends and patterns, and the legislation needs to evolve together with these changes to ensure that the right legal measures are put in place to cater for situations that may have not been foreseen. For example, the advent of AI.
Okay, yeah.
If there is online recruitment, if that form of recruitment, or let's say cyber criminality, was not foreseen to be a form of exploitation or a form of trafficking purpose in a way in 2007, then obviously the law needs to change to cater for those type of things.
Of course.
But yes, this is the piece of legislation or the act that talks about trafficking in persons. That is the Trafficking in Persons Act of 2007, in short, TIP Act 2007.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that's the one is it seeking to amend or to bring another bill?
Yes, at this point, the bill is out.
Okay.
We are to proceed to cabinet approval. That is yet to be done. But just to say that we are reviewing to see what needs to be adjusted to enhance institutional capacity, and in addition to that, also ensure we have provisions that are in line with new emerging trends and patterns of trafficking in persons in the Gambia.
That's it. But I wonder though how you would evaluate this. Yes, the 2007 one for all it was worth. The implementation. How do you think that we performed in terms of implementation? Until now, we are seeking to amend, fine.
Yes.
But what do you think?
Yeah, the implementation has been brilliant.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that there is no room for improvement. Again, trafficking in persons is an issue that not only NATIP can deal with. When you talk about transnational organized crime, it involves partners both at the local and international level. So we'll have key partners like the Gambia Police Force, the Gambia Immigration Department, State Intelligence Service, you name it. It requires nationwide coverage, which the agency does not have at this point. So key stakeholders such as the police, the immigration, intelligence continue to work with NATIP to ensure that wherever there's an issue of human trafficking, together with other NGOs and government and non-government actors, we're able to mobilize and utilize the national referral mechanism for the protection of vulnerable migrants, including victims of trafficking, to properly refer these victims and give them the needed and required services.
Absolutely. I'm supporting victims and survivors and all of that, absolutely important. But what about prosecutions, I wonder? How often do you have any stats on the number of people taken to court for trafficking in persons? That surely is part of the whole mechanism of deterrence, isn't it?
Absolutely, we do. I always say when we raise awareness and we don't see the law being applied, then that's a problem, and that takes us to the drawing board, right? So at the moment, we have 4 convictions in the past 2 years, which I say is a huge, huge milestone for the government of the Gambia, in a sense that previously or prior to 2023, there was no conviction on human trafficking, despite the fact that the act was enacted in the year 2007. So to be able to see the courts apply the law and have 4 individuals convicted of trafficking in persons and currently serving 15 years in prison at the State Central Prisons Mile 2, in addition to being ordered to pay a fine. That is a huge development. Equally, there was another conviction. I did not count that as the 5th conviction because the main charge or one of the counts was trafficking, but the courts found that there were some issues missing, some elements rather, but she was convicted on a charge of benefiting off the proceeds of prostitution. So this goes to show that the approach to prosecution does not only look at the main issues, but if there are other issues in which the person can be convicted for which the evidence supports, then these people would be held accountable.
That's it. I was just about to sort of come to that. The challenges that investigators and prosecutors face in handling trafficking in persons cases.
Numerous challenges. One of them is mainly, I will start locally. We know the society and the nature of the culture of silence and fear of stigma and discrimination in the Gambia. Not a lot of Gambian victims or survivors of trafficking are willing to come forward. We've had instances where Gambian victims have been repatriated, but when they come back, there is not a huge amount of willingness to cooperate with the investigations, because it's either the person that recruited you is a close family member, or it's someone that you don't want to expose, or you at a personal level don't want to go out there to say that I have been trafficked. Because for a lot of these young ladies, there may be a belief that that might ruin their chances of getting married. Because if you were trafficked to the Middle East, you were probably being exploited through labor exploitation. But the perception of the community would be, oh, kinari foye nenko, and then they're back to the Gambia. Yeah. So that stigma, you rather be hush about it than report. But in respect of other non-nationals, the trial process is one time frame that for someone that wants to earn money every day, they may not be willing to wait for that period. Again, a lot of these girls are made to take an oath. So when they take an oath prior to traveling to the Gambia, they may be told, we're going to cut a piece of your pubic hair, and this, you're going to, some drops of your blood. When you say something against the individual that you're under, you'll either die or go mad. So that fear of spiritual retaliation may stop them from cooperating with investigations. And this is hugely affecting the work that we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is an area where perhaps the law cannot help.
Not
this
necessarily.
is more of a social norm
absolutely.
And
more
awareness,
sensitization right.
and the like. Talking about that, ECOWAS Parliament recently concluded a week-long engagement with communities on human trafficking. Yeah. How did you see that? I'm sure were you in collaboration with them?
Yes.
Tell us about
that was actually a very interesting engagement in a sense that we continue to partner with not just the ECOWAS Parliament, but other stakeholders in the fight against human trafficking. That engagement was important in the sense that it did take the tour party to different communities around the Gambia. And it was an opportunity for the parliamentarians as well to be out there to show the public that we're not only at the National Assembly making these laws, we're concerned about social protection issues, and we're here with the technical expertise to show you what you need to be mindful of and what are some of the avenues available for help. So that engagement was quite a useful one for NATIP and the ECOWAS Parliament as well.
That's it. And you see that regional cooperation will be so important in tackling it, because it's really a regional problem.
Fundamentally.
That sort of thing.
Rightly so.
Yes. And soon, 30th of July, will be the day of what? Against human trafficking.
Right.
So, what activities have you got planned?
We've got so many activities planned to commemorate the World Day Against Human Trafficking. The theme for this year's commemoration is trapped behind scams, and that goes back to the issue of QNet that I was talking about, and all other forms of scams that manifest and help perpetrators to recruit individuals. The first activities is we'll be having a community dialogue and an interface at Birkama, Druma Kolong. And this is an area in which the issue of sexual exploitation it's just happening in a manner that is unimaginable. But it is important that the community knows what exactly is going on, because the homes in which these young girls are housed are homes owned by Gambians, rented to individuals by Gambians, and it is the community of Gambians that benefit from the services that these individuals provide. So it's important to have that dialogue with the community and say, hey, this is not just sex work. You pay for the service, someone provides the service. This goes beyond that. This is someone trying to exploit another person for their own benefit, and that is wrong. And if you look at the laws, you can be charged and taken to court and prosecuted for serving as an intermediary, for refusing to reveal information on trafficking in persons, for serving as an agent, for use of a victim of trafficking. So it's important that the awareness is raised, so you be careful that police doesn't knock at your door to say, hey, you have some questions to answer. In addition to the community dialogue, media engagements was also ongoing. We also have another activity that is going to be the gift of dignity. We all understand that dignity is a human right. It cannot be taken away. However, victims of human trafficking get their dignity stripped of them. So providing them with the opportunity to regain that, either through supporting them with education, gifting them with equipment or materials that can help their existence on a daily basis, that also forms part of our activities. Most importantly, we'll also be having the launch of the National Strategic Plan of Action, that is the NATIP, which will span from 2026 to 2030. And this looks at all areas of intervention across the board of government that is necessary to fight human trafficking. And most importantly, we also added a sixth pillar to the NAP, which looks at monitoring and evaluation, because we don't want to do things blindly. We want to be able to measure successes, be able to know what are the bottlenecks and address them. There has also been developed a training manual on trafficking in persons. This will also be launched on the day. And the fifth activity is also going to be the finals. We've started a kickoff match, which was on Saturday, which is dubbed Kick Football, Kick Trafficking, to address the issues of trafficking in sports. So the finals will be held around the 31st or the first week of August. In a sense, these are the activities marking towards the day. We use this opportunity to call on everyone to come on board and support the cause or initiatives, both the private and the public sector, especially with the campaign on the gift of dignity. If it is a public or private sector that is able to provide support, be it scholarship, sponsorship, internships for victims of trafficking, do reach out to NATIP. We're more than happy to receive that support.
Absolutely. You said the theme this year is?
Hidden behind, trapped behind the scams.
Trapped behind the scams.
Yes.
Very, very important, isn't it? Yes. Thank you very much, Ms. Aissatou Darboe, Executive Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. Thank you for making us understand the law on trafficking in persons. So as we observe the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons on the 30th of July, we are reminded that the fight against traffickers is everyone's responsibility. So if you suspect that someone is being trafficked or exploited, report it to the appropriate authorities. Your action could save lives. Thank you very much. Until next time, I'm Umudu Boj.